Hello, I'm Colleen Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association Insights podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Association Insights podcast. I'm your host, Colleen Gallagher, and today I'm looking forward to continuing our series on AI and how associations are implementing it. I'm excited to welcome the CEO of the American Paint Horse Association, Dave Dellin. Dave, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, to start off, tell us a little bit more about your association, who you serve, what your mission is, and about your role too, and what that looks like day to day.
Sure. So a lot of people often are not really familiar with what an equine breed registry does. So for those of you from outside of that world, I'll just give you this analogy. Think of us a little bit like a DMV for horses. So we create basically a title, like a car title would be, for the American Paint Horse. And that's a specific breed. We're actually the second largest breed in the world. And what we do when we create that is we list the lineage of the horse, the date the horse was foaled out on, all of those kind of statistical components that owners like to have. And it helps increase the value of a horse over one with no pedigree, right? That's kind of the whole purpose of these registries getting started in the first place. But at our core, that's what we do. Now, we do a lot more than that at APHA, and really our mission is to preserve, promote, and provide meaningful experiences with paint horses. So that gives us a lot of reach and a lot of freedom to be able to do a lot of different things, including an entire competition section and all kinds of outreach, all kinds of educational components. We have our hands in a lot of different things in the Western lifestyle world, but at our root, at our core, the association is geared towards creating those registration papers for the American Paint Horse.
I love that. And, as a communicator, when someone can boil down what you do into a quick analogy or metaphor like that everyone instantly gets, I just love that. It makes it so simple and easy. And you can see the light in someone's face of, oh, I get it now. So I think that's awesome. And then to be able to tell it in a story too, and really bring it to life, that's always awesome. Now, one of the things that drew my attention to you all was that I saw in November of 24, APHA launched BeccaBot. So that's the AI-powered virtual assistant. It's named after your founder. Before we get into what it is, tell me what led your team to explore AI in the first place?
Yeah. So kind of a cool component to it. And a little bit of that comes from my standpoint personally. I'd assumed the CEO role about 2 years ago now in May of 23. Stepped in. I'd worked for the American Paint Horse Association for about 10 years before that as director of judges and director of the competition department, and moved on into this component. And with all the emerging tech, all the different things, I was always trying to look for multiple different ways to gain an edge for the association and to grow personally in a new role as CEO. It was something I had not personally done before. Really, my background stems way more from actual hands-on horse training, horse judging, clinician, those kind of components than it really did from a management standpoint. So I was trying to learn all that I could about everything related to the duties and the role of a CEO. And one of those components that and I often tell people this, so much of the time it's about who you know and the connections that you make within life as to be able to leverage those things in times of need, right? And so most people are probably familiar with her, but Mary Byers is someone that is a facilitator for strategic planning. And she helped us with the strategic plan in early 23. And someone that I respect immensely, learned a ton from. And she reached out to me and said, hey, there's this CEO masterclass group that is getting together that from different CEOs, CIOs, management people from multiple different associations that are all learning about AI. And I think you'd enjoy it. I think you'd be interested in it. And so through that and joining that group was really where I kind of gained a huge amount of knowledge and a huge amount of interest in BeccaBot specifically. Now, the cool thing about BeccaBot, it is a chatbot, as you were talking about, but it can be white labeled for any association to do whatever. And so we named BeccaBot after our founder, Rebecca Tyler Lockhart. She was the founder of APHA. And so we named her after that. And I would consider our BeccaBot a general question and answer type of chatbot function. So she's trained on anything on our apha.com website, as well as anything in our rule book, which, believe it or not, horse organizations are notorious for having extremely complicated rules. And we have about a 400-page rule book that governs our association, our competitions, everything that we do. So it's way, way easier for our membership to be able to get the answers they're looking for by utilizing something like BeccaBot for us. So that's something that really has been exciting. It's been useful. From my standpoint, one of the main reasons that I jumped into that, and I know we'll probably cover some more of this later in this podcast a little bit as well, as far as strategic planning for nonprofits. But part of the strategy behind that and the real use case behind why I wanted to go down this path really centered around the amount of phone calls that we take on a daily basis to be able to help our membership. So we handle oftentimes 4,000 to 6,000 phone calls per month of members calling in, having some sort of question, or they need help with something or whatever it may be. And so the same staff members that are handling those phone calls are also the ones registering the horses, doing transfers of ownership, the stallion breeding reports, all of the other paperwork involved. So the more that I could lighten their load as staff members, then the faster they could actually process the work by getting them off the phones more. And I say that not because we don't want to talk to our membership or anything like that, but 90% of the time, those phone calls would come in and it'd be something that is listed either in the rule book or on the website, but it's hard to find. And, I'd put that on us as an association, far more on the member, that they should have looked harder. I wanted to be able to make it easier for them to be able to get the information that they needed. And so that's really the use case that we went into it with, and with the thought of, let's see if that can happen or not, see if we can free that up. And fortunately it has. We've seen about a 36% reduction in the number of phone calls since we have implemented BeccaBot, and we track that on the monthly. And so that has really, really made everyone's life a whole lot better, both the member and the staff members that are fielding those phone calls.
Yeah, a couple things you said just really stood out to me there. I think, one thing when you talked about joining that group and growing your own, interests and knowledge, we did an association leader series. Earlier this year, I think maybe late last year. And the thing that came through loud and clear is the best leaders are the ones that remain curious and keep learning every day. And that's such a great example of letting that curiosity drive new innovative things like that. That's just really cool to me. And then using AI to free up your staff to do more of what really matters is really awesome, because I think there is that fear of, we're replacing people or things like that with AI, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. It's we're getting more efficient so we can do more while still having all of this done, which I really like hearing that too. Tell me, how did you know it was the right time to introduce this for your members? Because it makes sense from the staff standpoint, but I think a lot of us, having used some of the AI chatbots, if you used them 3 years ago versus today, there's a huge difference. So, how did you know this was good for your membership and knowing that it was going to deliver in a way that was different from some of those older ones 5+ years ago?
Yeah, so great question, number one. Number two, to answer that the best that I can, I would tell you we shopped for months. We talked to multiple different AI chatbot groups, salespeople. I'll be honest, there were probably half a dozen of them that didn't even call us back from the sales department. And that's a sure sign for me that if your salespeople don't call back, the technical assistant part, if something goes wrong later on, they're sure not going to call you back, right? So,
Nope.
so it's one of those things that as we kind of ran into BeccaBot through that CEO mastermind class, that when we had conversations with their leadership, their CEO Rob Barnes is a really forward thinker and a great guy, and their customer service was phenomenal from day one. First conversation, first impressions were extremely good. And what I learned, and I think this is important to know, not all chatbots are created equal. A lot of it has to do with how they're designed on the backside. And then most importantly, more than anything else, it's how does the training of that bot actually take place? And there's a lot to that. I am certainly no expert in training AI chatbots, but I do know that we spent many months and tested rigorously on multiple different areas to build up what we would consider a correct answer, and tested it and tested it and tested it before we ever rolled that out to the public. Because the last thing I wanted our membership to experience is what we all have dealt with at some point in our lives, where we get on some website or something and you get these canned answers, you get stuff that doesn't make sense, it's not really helping. And that was I would rather not have done anything than to create a bad product, right? So
Yep.
we spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. I had about 3 or 4 staff members that worked on this off and on. It wasn't the only thing they worked on, but worked on it off and on over probably 60, 90 days with the BeccaBot team. That group is extremely responsive. They would communicate back and forth multiple times per day to get the training really done in the way that we wanted it done. And, we're running well over 95% accuracy whenever people are asking questions. And in the hard part, especially for the horse world, the difficult part, and there's many other nonprofits or organizations that are this way, but we kind of have our own vocabulary, right? It's not necessarily the same thing that people talk about in general day-to-day conversations. And so to really get a chatbot truly trained up well on that took some effort and took some time, but it was definitely well worth it. And what that allowed us to do is it allowed our membership to not necessarily have to be expert prompters. The more you learn about AI, you'll find out a lot of it is at how you prompt it, what questions do you ask, how do you ask those questions, all of those kind of things. And we really wanted to make it to where normal, what you would call a horse person, which is our membership, felt comfortable just talking to it in the way that we speak to each other as horse people, right? And that was a real key component for us in the training, and that's part of what took a little bit of extra time. But you would have that in any specialty nonprofit. If you're talking about accounting practices or whatever it may be, the insurance world, we all have our own vocabularies within those worlds. So what my best recommendation is on that is to make sure that you do put in that time and effort, and make sure whoever you're working with on that, that is your expert that's providing the chatbot, make sure that there's someone that you want to spend a lot of time working with, especially on the setup. Once we've set it up, it has gone pretty seamlessly. There's obviously things that may not be perfect, but like I said, we're running well above 90-95% on accuracy rate. So those few instances where there's some sort of incorrect answer, it's not phrased exactly the way we would want it to be phrased, we communicate that back to them. We check those logs weekly and communicate back to the BeccaBot team, and they're really good about putting in extra training ongoing.
Yeah, I love the intentionality behind that, because it really thought about how your end user could benefit the most from it, and to not have to be that expert prompter, because it is amazing the difference it makes when you're using AI with a good prompt versus just putting anything in. So that's really thoughtful in terms of who's using it and how they're using it. And I love that piece of it. You already talked a bit about what it's for and the kind of questions asked. Are there any other ways you're seeing it help your membership?
Yeah, the cool part about it for us, we're an international organization. So we have close to 40,000 members worldwide. So we're seeing all kinds of chats coming in or questions being asked from various parts of the world that aren't necessarily between the 9 to 5 of Central Daylight Time in Fort Worth, Texas, right? So, we've got lots of members in Europe. We've got some in Australia. So it's super helpful for them if they have a question. They don't have to be up in the middle of the night to try to get a hold of a human at the office. And that has really helped them a lot. We're seeing on average about 500 users a month asking somewhere around 1,000 questions. And so that just on that piece, not on our website in general, but just on our BeccaBot, that's what we're averaging each month. So that's a lot of fun to be able to see. And I feel like we're able to provide a better service to our membership, which is the other part of this that's really important for me. Is it's got to be good for both staff and for the membership, or it really just doesn't work long term.
Yep. No, that makes total sense and a really smart way of looking at it. You've already shared some really great stats. Is there any other early feedback you've seen over the last year here, whether it's members or staff or stakeholders, and anything has surprised you?
Yeah, no, it surprised me some of the ways that people want to test it. So different associations or businesses will put their chatbot in different parts of their website, right? Or within their IT stack. So some of them are behind some sort of paywall for members only or whatever. Ours is open to the world. And just because of what we want to do, it's right on our apha.com landing page. If you scroll down to the bottom, it's right there. And you can ask it anything. So we've been asked some really humorous questions, some things that have nothing to do with paint horses. What's the meaning of the universe kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in general, what it has allowed us to do on the backside, and I think that's what's important for anyone listening to this that is managing a nonprofit in some way, it really gives us some clarity about exactly what we're not doing a good enough job of informing our members of. So what I mean by that is if we're running, 20% of our questions are about how do I transfer a horse, then we need to be taking a hard look at the transfer process. Number one, is it too complicated in general? Is there a way we can simplify that through our bylaws and our rules? Number two, is there some educational components of how-to videos that we can put out there that are easily accessible, which we have some of those things already. And the cool thing about the way we use BeccaBot, she'll actually pull that video up to them. She'll pull a link up and say, hey, go to this video and watch this on how to do it. When they say, how do I transfer my horse? So there's some good components of that, but it allows us to keep a really good pulse on what are we doing right and what are we not doing a good enough job of within our association to be able to make I call it ease of transaction, but how do we make it easy for people to do things with our association? And that's really the cutting edge way that I think we all have to look at things, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. You've got to keep things as simple and easy for people to do as humanly possible. So that's a key part of our overall strategic plan and where we're going as an association is to simplify those rules and to be able to make those transactions easier for people, because we should be a positive help to someone in their horse experience, not a hindrance in some way where they dread having to deal with working with the association on something like getting a horse registered or transferred or buying a membership, whatever it may be. I think all of us fall under what I call the Amazon effect. And Amazon made retail shopping so doggone easy that it really changed the world that we live in. And there's lots of retailers that do that. I just use Amazon as the example because they were kind of the earth-shaking, groundbreaking way to do it. But I grew up in the days of going to a shopping mall and looking around if you wanted to buy something, right? And now you just browse on there at 2 a.m. if you're bored, I need a new pair of shoes or whatever. And it really has changed the way that retail works in general. And I think that's where as associations, equine associations especially, we've got to be very thoughtful about that. And how do we make those things easier for our membership to do? Because a lot of what we do is geared around people's hobbies and their expendable income. So there are huge businesses within the horse world and big breeding farms, competition groups, most of your major, call them a fairgrounds or coliseums within major cities. We're a huge economic driver. When the horse show rolls into town and we're there for 20 days or 30 days or whatever it may be, that's thousands of hotel nights and restaurants and people fueling up their trucks and whatever it may be. But at the core of it, it's someone's hobby. They're having fun in doing what they're doing with horses. And so it's really important for us to be helpful in that way.
Yeah. You know, what strikes me as almost funny is with all of this you're talking about and innovation and new technology and how exciting it is, it comes back to member experience, like everything, you know, it's just, that's the life of an association. So that's cool to make that connection and hear that come through in what you're talking about. Obviously, you've continued to improve this, and that's really cool how you're looking at accuracy. You're seeing how you can change things. You're thinking about, okay, if they're asking this too much, we need to change this process. So there's a lot going on the back end there. What about for your membership? How do you manage the expectations about what it can and can't do as technology changes and gets better?
Absolutely. So where we're at right now, there's kind of a disclaimer right above the box, the prompt box. There's a disclaimer that says what it's trained on, what Becca can answer questions about, what she cannot. And I think that's really important. I wanted to make it very clear, too, that they were not chatting with a live human. That's one of the most frustrating things when you think you're talking to a human, then you realize 4 or 5 messages in that you're not. So we made that very clear from the get-go, and I think that's important. As far as where it's going to go in the future, there's a lot of opportunity here, and it kind of boils down to both AI technology in general as well as Becca as a individual tool. And as I mentioned earlier, Becca is a chatbot. There's lots of different AI tools to be able to do lots of different things. And so figuring out the best way to incorporate some of those is really what I'm after. And so we're looking at all kinds of things that have never been provided previously from APHA based on that. So like an example, and this isn't functioning yet, we don't have this up and going, but it's one of the areas that we're really diving into to really look at and see if we can do would be some sort of a classified ad component within apha.com for people buying and selling horses. So that's a huge part of what happens within the horse industry is that people will buy and sell, trade horses back and forth all over the world. And we have lots of exports that go out of the country every year, all kinds of things. So connecting our membership and giving a easier way for people to be able to do that is really important. Because currently, the way that works in the horse world is that most people, if they have a horse that they would like to sell, they post that on their Facebook page. If and only if the algorithm shows it to someone else somewhere else in the world, will they see that, or you're friends with them on Facebook, or whatever. But that's how you get to see that horse is for sale. So that may be the perfect horse for you as a buyer, and you live in Germany, and someone in Virginia has this horse for sale, and you guys may never connect. But if APHA could potentially help make that connection, that would be really useful for our 40,000 members. With that being said, and I always think of that a little bit like something like Auto Trader, right? Where you can filter and you have a website where you can pick out a certain kind of car if you want. There are definitely websites that do that for horses as well. What I would like to do is also incorporate some AI tech into that through Betty that potentially could also help that search happen. So you just prompt it with, hey, this is the kind of horse I'm looking for. It could pull up all the different possibilities from anywhere in the world that do that. There again, that provides a service to our membership and creates a better experience for our members, driving value for their membership. And that's really what I'm after at the root of it, is I want to provide as much value as possible for someone's membership with APHA.
Yeah, that's exciting. Like, just really cool to think about. What else are you most excited about when you think about what's possible?
Yeah. So when we're talking futuristic, and what I'm looking at and thinking about strategically is, how do I incorporate AI into my complete IT stack, right? Because there's a lot of different capabilities, a lot of functions. When you start talking about potentially vectoring your membership to where you've got a really good profile built on them, that changes the game in the association world in a lot of ways. And what I mean by that, think of Netflix. You watch certain movies on Netflix, right? And then when you get done with that, it provides a whole bunch more that, hey, we think you might like these recommended movies. So they're vectoring you on the backside. They have a profile built out based on what you've watched. I would like to do the exact same thing for my membership based on what events you compete in, where you're located, what type of horses are you breeding, raising, how many do you raise per year. You could kind of vector those things. And we have that data now. What we don't have is an easy way to be able to build that out into what you would think of as like some sort of central data platform that you could then have different types of AI tools be able to go in there and get these things organized in such a way that provides some really insightful feedback for us. And that allows us to do better things like customized newsletters, right? If you're really interested in the horse world, there's a lot of different quote unquote games you can play with a horse. And what I mean by that is, we call them disciplines, but think of like a casino. When you go to a casino, there's roulette or blackjack or whatever. Well, that same way with horses. You have reining, you have cutting, you have cow horse, you have down the track racing, barrel racing, Western pleasure, horsemanship. There's about 40 actually different disciplines that we do within the American Paint Horse Association. So within that, if I can give you a newsletter that gives you all the highlights of paint horses doing great things in, say, reining, because that's what you're into, that newsletter now becomes way more important to you and way more informational than if I was giving you a bunch of information about maybe racing and you don't know or care anything about paint racing. So that's one of those things I think is really important. Same thing goes for the racing people. They may not necessarily want to know who won the Halter Million Futurity this year in the halter, but they definitely want to know who won the Grand Futurity at Remington Park. So being able to have some more of that personalized kind of content in those newsletters based upon a better vectoring of our membership is, in my opinion, the way of the future.
Yeah, personalization is where it's at. And that's amazing when you can really deliver something to someone that matters to them and is meaningful to them. I mean, that's where it's at for sure. For our other association execs that are listening in, there's a lot that are still on the fence about AI and kind of unsure where do I go next. So what do you think leaders should be prioritizing in when it comes to testing or adapting AI tools really this year and beyond?
Yeah, I would tell you that as a CEO, if you're a CEO or an executive director of a nonprofit somewhere that's thinking about it, I think that you are your best resource to figure out what use cases could you potentially use this for. And the way I thought about it is, what are some pain points that I could find some efficiencies in within the work that we do? That was like the base level of starting out, trying to wrap my head around it. Then I really started trying to educate myself. Once I figured out what potential things could I use it for, then I tried to educate myself about how it worked, what it was, and who provides those kinds of things. Through that process, you will discover many more use cases that you hadn't even thought about. Like you just, the more you dive into it and the more you learn about AI use, then it'll open up some doors there and you're going to go, wow, I never thought about using it like that, but that'd be a great thing that would really help us out a bunch. So, I think you've got to kind of figure out an original intent. It doesn't even have to be a goal, or it doesn't have to be a strategic plan at that point. Just some idea, some intent of some problem that you're trying to solve. Then as you get educated about that, you'll discover a few other ones. Then I recommend doing a lot of research. Like I said, we shopped around 10 to 12 different chatbot type groups. and no one could really provide what we're getting with BeccaBot at this point in time. And I'm not just trying to brag on them. It's just the honest truth. I've told them that. I told them when we were talking to them, I was talking to other groups. I'm just saying that you may find a different one that works better for you. For us, we couldn't find any of them that could take such a complicated amount of vocabulary and really turn it into the kind of answers that we want with as minimal a prompting as what we wanted. But that being said, I think really try to evaluate that. And more than anything, don't be afraid to reach out and talk to some groups that really specialize in this field. I think that there's a group I'm actually discussing kind of a overall thought process with stuff called Symmetry. They do a lot of road mapping for AI, for nonprofits, that kind of thing. So they're an interesting group as well that I think I've learned a lot from Rick Bauckham, and I think there's a lot of value there. So more than anything, you said it earlier, don't ever quit trying to learn. Don't ever quit trying to grow. And I think that's really the key component, is figuring out how do I do that and where do I get that knowledge from. And there's a lot of good ones out there. There's a lot of good places to gain AI knowledge. Man, there's a lot of them too that are probably not good. It's a little bit like anything else.
I know.
That, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of salespeople trying to sell something for AI or AI based. But the more you learn about it, the more you can understand how an LLM works and really what it is, then I think that you can get a pretty good handle on those things. The sidecar sync is a really good group. If people aren't familiar with that, there's
great.
some really great education on there. And so I would highly recommend them as well.
Yeah, this has been so fantastic. That's such great advice. I just appreciate all of the insights you've shared around this today. It's very cool to hear what you're doing and how you're doing it. Before we let you go, though, we like to wrap up all of our podcasts with some just for fun questions to let our audience get to know you a little bit better. So a little rapid fire here. Have you gotten to get away to anywhere fun lately?
Yeah, actually, two places in the last couple of weeks. One was the American Performance Horseman event held in Fort Worth. That's a really, really a unique event within the horse world. That it's a spectator-based event, and it's put on by Teton Ridge, which is a really great group, media group within the Western lifestyle space, and they did a great job. And we love that event in a lot of ways. And the other one that I went to just 2 weeks ago was Cheyenne Frontier Days in Cheyenne, Wyoming. That was a really fun. That's a huge rodeo, been around, very historic. I think this is like the 149th year for Frontier Days, and it's just a neat experience and one of the largest rodeos in PRCA.
Very cool. Okay, if you're a podcast listener, what podcasts are you listening to that you'd recommend for our listeners as well?
Yeah, I listen to a huge variety, man. I listen to a lot of them. I watch a lot of them on YouTube. I'm a big fan of lots of different podcasts. I mentioned them earlier in this context, especially when we're talking about AI and we're talking about nonprofits. The Sidecar Sync podcast is absolutely the way to go. Amit, Mallory, the whole crew there do a fantastic job of bringing you the latest innovations, creations. They go into so many different levels there. It's fantastic. So that's my go-to when I'm trying to learn more about AI stuff. An off-the-wall one that I really enjoyed the other day that I ran onto was on the Sean Ryan show. He had Charles Hoskinson on there, who is one of the founders of Cardano, the cryptocurrency Cardano, and he's also one of the investors in Colossal Biosciences in Dallas. So it kind of piqued my interest and listen to that one. That one's 5 hours long just on its own. And obviously I broke that up over many different times, but that was a really interesting one. If anyone's into that, he does a really good job of explaining crypto in general and cryptocurrency and where it's going and how that potentially may affect our financial world. So pretty interesting one. Then he dives into a whole lot of other stuff, including Colossal and what they're doing with genetics, and they're the group that brought back the dire wolves. I don't know if you saw that.
Okay, yeah.
everywhere. So that's same group that did that, and now they're working on the woolly mammoth. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah,
that's wild. Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, what's one place in the U.S. that you've never been to but are dying to go?
Oh yes, for me that's Alaska. So my dad was a aircraft mechanic on the Alaskan pipeline back in the 70s, and so I've heard a lot of Alaska stories, but I would love to go visit there at some point.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list too, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, finish this sentence. When you see me looking at my phone, it probably means that I'm...
Probably means I'm answering a Slack message from some staff member. But
yes, I feel that.
Yes, absolutely. Those Slack messages keep coming. No doubt about it.
That they do. Too funny. Well, Dave, thank you again. This has been such a pleasure, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association Insights Podcast, previously known as the Association 100 Podcast, is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of our newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association? Or do you have some words of wisdom from the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwardupwrd.com. Be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association insights and inspiration. Thanks for tuning in.